The deduction was hiding in plain sight on line 21 of Schedule C. Lifestyle consulting fees, $56 400. The number sat there, perfectly aligned, black text on a white background, as neutral and unemotional as the tax code itself. It wasn't highlighted, it wasn't flagged, it wasn't out of proportion in a way that would alarm a casual reviewer. It was just another line item buried among depreciation schedules and professional service expenses, designed to blend in with the rest of the document. But numbers don't lie, they only wait. I stared at the figure across my dual monitors, one displaying the 1040 draft, the other showing the supporting schedules and ledgers. My coffee mug was suspended halfway to my mouth, forgotten, the ceramic already cooling against my fingers. It was 11:47 p.m. On a Tuesday in early April, that narrow window of time when the rest of the world had gone to sleep and accountants were still awake, parsing truth from fiction one cell at a time. The house in Forest Hills was quiet, not the cozy kind of quiet, but the clinical kind, the kind that hums faintly with electricity. The server rack in the corner emitted a low, steady vibration. The HVAC clicked on and off. Somewhere in the distance, a neighbor's garage door closed. Otherwise, nothing. $56 400. I said the number out loud, just to hear how it sounded. Numbers reveal themselves differently when spoken. Some are soft, some are sharp. This one landed heavy. It wasn't a round number. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. I divided it in my head before my fingers even reached the calculator. $4,700 a month. Exactly. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking faintly, and adjusted my glasses. Monthly amounts that precise rarely belong to legitimate consulting arrangements. Consultants bill hourly or per project, or in irregular chunks tied to milestones. Salaries repeat. Allowances repeat. Support payments repeat. This repeated. I highlighted the line and pulled the vendor details. The EAN populated automatically. I copied it, opened a new tab, and referenced it against the QuickBooks master vendor file I maintained for Gordon Miller Designs. The list was extensive. Engineers, designers, city consultants, sustainability auditors. Names I recognized, firms I had vetted, entities I had verified down to their licensing numbers and insurance policies. The EIN didn't match any of them. That didn't mean it was fake. It meant it was new or hidden. I ran the EIN through my external verification database. The entity came back quickly. LSC Partners LLC, registered address, a post office box in Brentwood, Tennessee. I felt the faintest tightening at the base of my skull, that instinctive response, the one that had saved clients millions and put others in prison. The feeling that came not from suspicion, but from pattern recognition, from experience, LSC Partners. I opened the state registration filing. Delaware, of course. Delaware offered anonymity like a service. Anyone who wanted to disappear inside a corporate shell started there. The registered agent was a generic service company. No names, no faces, just paper. I glanced back at the Schedule C. The description read Lifestyle Consulting. I mouthed the word silently. Lifestyle Consulting. My husband was an architect, a very good one. His firm specialized in sustainable luxury homes, the kind that ended up in glossy magazines with captions about clean lines and thoughtful integration with nature. He hired consultants constantly, structural engineers, landscape architects, lead certification specialists, acoustic experts, lighting designers, the list went on, but Lifestyle Consulting. I had been doing this for 22 years. I had seen every euphemism in the book. Business development, client relations, strategic advisory. I had seen escorts coded as marketing expenses, vacations disguised as site visits, private jets labeled as logistics. Lifestyle consulting wasn't a term used by anyone who wanted scrutiny. I opened the general ledger for Gordon Miller Designs and filtered by vendor name. My fingers moved automatically, muscle memory taking over. The spreadsheet populated instantly. There it was. Monthly wire transfers, January 3rd, $4 700 February 3rd, $4 700 March 3rd, $4 700, each one categorized as consulting structural. I stared at the coding and felt something cold settle in my chest. Structural consulting fees were typically lumpy. Engineers billed heavily during design phases, then tapered off. They didn't invoice the same amount on the same day every month like rent. This wasn't consulting. This was payroll without a W-2. I checked the payment method, wire transfer. Not etch, not check. Wires cost money. Wires are used when you don't want paper, when you want speed. When you want control. I pulled up the business checking account. The payments were clean, buried among legitimate expenses. No one would notice unless they were looking, and no one ever looked as closely as I did. I switched to the MX Platinum statement. This was our personal card, the one we used for groceries, gas, family dinners, the occasional splurge. Gordon liked to keep business and personal expenses separate, or at least he liked the appearance of separation. It made him feel disciplined, professional. There were no payments to LSC partners there. That made sense. Whatever LSC was, it was being kept strictly in the business lane. I scrolled through December, scanning for charitable contributions in year and expenses that might affect deductions. The scrolling was automatic, almost meditative, until a single line stopped me. December 24th, $248.50. Tiny Toes Boutique, Franklin, Tennessee. My thumb froze on the trackpad. Tiny Toes. I stared at the merchant name longer than necessary, as if it might change if I gave it time. It didn't. December 24th, Christmas Eve. I remembered that day with a clarity that surprised me. Memory has a way of sharpening around moments you later realize were important, even if they didn't feel that way at the time. The house smelled like clove and honey. I had been standing at the stove, basting the ham, the oven light casting a warm glow across the kitchen. The cabinetry was Italian, custom, built, installed 3 years earlier during the renovation. Gordon had insisted was an investment. I had approved the expense, negotiated the contractor down, ensured the invoices were clean. I had been wearing an apron dusted with flour. The phone was wedged between my shoulder and ear when Gordon called. "Running a little late, Mayor," he said. His voice had that familiar tone, the one he used when he wanted something to sound unavoidable. Last-minute crisis with the permitting on the Henderson build. You know how the city gets before the holidays. I had smiled then, indulgent, understanding. I had believed him. I get it, I said, whisking the glaze. Just make sure you're home by 6. The Caldwells are coming over at 7. Promise, he said. Love you. I had hung up feeling content, proud even, proud of his work ethic, proud of the life we had built. I thought he was working late for us, for our future, for the ski trip to Aspen we had planned for February. He wasn't at the office. He was 20 minutes south in Franklin, Tennessee, at a baby boutique. You don't spend $248 at a place called Tiny Toes unless there is a baby involved. And you don't do it on Christmas Eve unless that baby matters to you. Gordon didn't have nieces or nephews. We didn't have grandchildren. Our son Leo was 22, a senior at Duke, 6'1", and definitely not shopping in a store that sold onesies and crib shoes. I didn't gasp, I didn't feel dizzy, I didn't knock my coffee mug over or feel my heart race. What I felt instead was something much more dangerous. Clarity, the kind that comes when a discrepancy finally resolves. When a balance sheet that's been bleeding red suddenly makes sense because you found the missing variable. I sat back in my chair and took a sip of my coffee. It was cold and bitter. I welcomed the taste. It grounded me. Gordon wasn't just cheating on his taxes. He was cheating on me, and he had made a fatal miscalculation. He had forgotten who I was to him. I was Marilyn, the boring wife, the one who reminded him to save receipts, who coded the family calendar, who asked annoying questions about expenses, the one who made sure everything ran smoothly so he could focus on being brilliant. He had forgotten that outside the walls of this house, outside the performance of domestic normalcy, I was something else entirely. To the IRS, to forensic accounting, to anyone who had ever tried to hide money from me. I was a predator. I was Marilyn Miller, 48 years old. If you passed me in the grocery store, you wouldn't notice me. Beige trench coat, sensible flats, hair pulled back, I looked like exactly what I was supposed to look like, a suburban accountant who drove a Volvo XC90 and volunteered at the library on weekends. Appearances matter. I had built my life on that principle. From my home office, I ran Miller and Associates, a boutique firm managing the finances of roughly 40 high-net worth individuals and small businesses. I fixed messes. I found lost money. I legally minimized tax exposure with surgical precision. For 22 years, I had applied that same rigor to my marriage. Gordon and I had been a team, or at least I believed we were. He was the visionary, the artist, the man who could sell an idea with a smile and a sketch. I was the foundation, the one who made sure the lights stayed on. I paid the mortgage. I funded the IRA. I managed the rental properties. I ensured his credit score never dipped below 800. "You're my rock, Mayor," he liked to say, flashing that grin that worked so well in client meetings. "I'd be living in a cardboard box without you." He wasn't wrong. When we met, he was a broke draftsman drowning in student loans, leasing cars he couldn't afford because he liked how they made him feel. He had ambition and talent, but no structure, no discipline, no plan. I fixed him. I built him. I incorporated his firm. I structured his finances. I managed every dollar of cash flow until he wasn't just Gordon anymore, but Gordon Miller, award-winning architect. I remembered our first real office. It wasn't an office at all. It was the dining room table of our one-bedroom apartment in Donaldson. That was 2004. Gordon had just quit his job at a big firm to strike out on his own. He had no clients and $12,000 in credit card debt. I was working 2 jobs then. My day job as a junior auditor at Deloitte. My night job as Gordon's unpaid bookkeeper, secretary, and emotional support system. One night stood out more than the others. It was late, past midnight. Gordon was slumped over his drafting board, staring at a design that refused to resolve itself. The Miller Spec House, the project that was supposed to launch his career. "It's no good, Mayor," he said, tossing his pencil aside. "The bank won't finance it. The numbers don't work. I'm going to have to go back to the firm, crawl back to Peterson and beg for my job." He looked defeated. Broken, I walked over and put my hand on his shoulder. "No," I said, "you're not going back. We have no money," he said. "We can't buy the lot." I went to the bedroom and opened my sock drawer. Beneath folded cotton and wool was a checkbook I rarely touched. My safety fund, money I had been saving since I was 16. Money my father had left me when he died. Money meant for a house or a child. I wrote a check for $25,000 and placed it on the drafting table. "This is the lot," I said. He stared at it like it might vanish. "I can't take this," he said. "That's your dad's money." "It's our money," I said. "I believe in you." He hugged me so tightly my ribs hurt. "I swear," he whispered, "I'll pay you back. I'll make you rich. I'll give you everything you ever wanted." He kept 2 of those promises. He made me rich, but what I wanted wasn't the house in Forest Hills, or the Volvo, or the country club membership. I wanted loyalty, and he repaid me by expensing his mistress. I looked back at the screen. $56, $400 a year. That wasn't a fling, that was a household income. I needed to know who she was. I didn't storm into the bedroom where Gordon was sleeping, blissfully unaware that his financial life was unraveling in my hands. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I opened a new spreadsheet. I named it Project Liability, X. And I began to work. I sat there for several minutes after naming the file, my fingers resting lightly on the keyboard, the cursor blinking patiently in cell A1 as if waiting for instructions. The house remained quiet, unaware that the atmosphere had shifted. There is a moment in every investigation when emotion still tries to speak first, when instinct urges confrontation, drama, release. I had trained myself long ago to silence that voice. Emotion creates noise. Noise obscures data. This wasn't about betrayal yet. Betrayal could come later. This was about exposure. I began by mapping everything I knew, not what I felt. Dates, amounts, accounts, vendors, patterns. I pulled 3 years of general ledger data and copied it into the spreadsheet. I froze the header rows, applied filters, and created tabs for income, expenses, capital expenditures, and transfers. I worked methodically, the way I always did when a client suspected fraud but didn't yet understand its scale. The first thing I confirmed was consistency. The LSC partners' payments had started 18 months earlier. Not sporadically, not experimentally. The first transfer hit on the 3rd of the month and continued like clockwork. Same amount, same description, same approval signature. Gordon's that told me 2 things immediately. First, whatever this was, it was intentional. Second, he wasn't improvising. He had a system. I opened the approval workflow logs. Gordon had insisted on implementing a dual approval system years ago, framing it as a best practice. In reality, it was a performance of transparency. He knew I reviewed everything. What he hadn't accounted for was how closely I reviewed patterns of behavior, not just transactions. Each LSC invoice was attached as a PDF. I opened one. It looked legitimate at first glance, clean formatting. Professional tone, vague descriptions of consultative support. No deliverables listed, no hours logged. No specific project references, red flag. I zoomed in on the metadata. The PDF had been created using the same version of Adobe Creative Suite Gordon used for presentations. Not uncommon in small firms, but notable. I checked the font, Arial. Most engineering firms used Helvetica or proprietary templates. Arial was default, lazy, or rushed. I opened another invoice, same font, same layout, same phrasing, just the date changed. I didn't need Brenda yet. I already knew this wasn't real consulting. What I needed was scope. I pivoted to the business bank statements. Gordon Miller Designs had 3 primary accounts: operating, retained earnings, and payroll. The LSC payments were coming from operating. That was smart. Payroll would have raised questions. Retained earnings required board approval. Operating was flexible. I traced every wire associated with LSC partners. Destination Bank, a regional Tennessee bank with strong privacy policies and weak oversight history. Gordon had done his homework. I added a column in the spreadsheet labeled Purpose Justification. Every line item got a note. Most consultants had clear deliverables, structural analysis, site surveys, permit expediting. LSC partners had none. I leaned back and rubbed my eyes. It was close to 1 in the morning now. My coffee was empty. I stood, rinsed the mug, and refilled it, the familiar routine grounding me. I didn't feel tired. Adrenaline was doing its job, sharpening everything. When I returned to my desk, I switched screens and opened our personal calendar. Gordon and I shared everything digitally: birthdays, trips, dinners, site visits, client meetings. I filtered for recurring events. Client dinner, site visit, consultant meeting. The phrasing changed, but the days didn't. Tuesdays. Thursdays, almost always in the evening, I opened Google Maps history. Gordon had location services enabled for traffic updates. He'd never bothered to turn it off. The pins told the story without emotion. Every Tuesday and Thursday, his car left the office around 6, drove south, and stopped in Brentwood. Not downtown, not job sites, Brentwood. I cross. Referenced dates with payments: January 3rd, Tuesday. Payment January 5th. Thursday, visit, January 17th, Tuesday, payment, January 19th, Thursday, visit. It wasn't random, it was a schedule. I felt something tighten in my chest then, not panic, not grief, but recognition. I had seen this before. Men who ran double lives were creatures of habit. They liked predictability. It made lying easier. I needed an address. I didn't waste time pretending I could get it on my own. There were moments when expertise mattered more than pride. I picked up the phone and dialed Brenda Vance. Brenda and I went back years. We had worked together when she was still with IRS Criminal Investigation. She had taught me how to read between filings, how to spot intent rather than error. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Marilyn," she said when she answered, her voice already rough from cigarettes, You don't call for favors. You call with subpoenas. What's wrong? I have an EN, I said. LSC Partners LLC. I need a physical address, a registered agent, and a beneficiary. There was a pause. I heard a lighter flick. It's tax season, she said. I'm buried. It's Gordon, I said quietly. The silence on the line stretched. Brenda knew Gordon. We'd had dinner together more than once. Give me the number, she said. I did. I heard the rapid clicking of her mechanical keyboard. Brenda didn't believe in waiting. Delaware shell, she muttered. Standard anonymity, but okay, here we go. I held the phone tighter. They filed a foreign entity registration in Tennessee to open a bank account, she said. Bank required a physical address. She paused. Maryland. She said slowly, you might want to sit down. I am 142 Bluebird Lane, Brentwood. I wrote it down. The Sharpie bled through the paper. Who owns it? I asked, checking deeds. She said, loading. More clicking. Purchased 18 months ago, she said. 850,000. Cash buyer. The Campbell Trust. A trust. Of course, but Brenda said, look at the notary block. I'm emailing you the deed. My iPad chimed. I opened the file. The signature was unmistakable. Gordon's, not as buyer, as witness, which meant he had been there. Present participating. Who is Tina Campbell? I asked. Brenda didn't answer immediately. She was already typing. No social media, she said. Smart, but her mother isn't. She pulled up a Facebook page. Grandmothers love to brag. She found the photo, a birthday party, balloons, a cake with a single candle. Tina was holding a baby boy. Standing beside her was Gordon, no ring. The caption read, Happy first birthday to my grandson, Gordon Jr. So happy his daddy could make it. I didn't speak. I set the iPad down carefully as if it were fragile. I walked to the bathroom, locked the door, turned on the shower, and sat on the toilet lid. The water ran hot, filling the room with steam muffling sound. I didn't cry. Crying took time. I didn't have time. Gordon Jr., that meant this wasn't new. This wasn't a mistake. This was a parallel life, a house, a child. A woman young enough to still believe men when they lied. I went back to my desk. The spreadsheet waited. If Gordon had been moving that much money without my noticing, it meant he wasn't moving cash. He was creating expenses. I pulled up the Kensington Project folder, Gordon's pride, his magnum opus, a multimillion-dollar development with enough complexity to hide almost anything. Look at the steel invoices, Brenda said when I called her back. I opened Apex Steel and Supply, invoice 4,092. Date November 12th, amount $42,000. Zoom in, she said. I did, the font Arial. I whispered, Apex uses Helvetica, Brenda said. And check the remittance address. It was a suite number. Apex operated out of a warehouse bay. He cloned it, I said. He photoshopped a real invoice, Brenda said. Change the wiring instructions to LSC account. You approved the payment. I closed my eyes briefly. I had paid him to cheat on me. You didn't know. Brenda said firmly, he's good, but he's not better than you. I opened the tax return again. LSC Partners wasn't just receiving money. It was being deducted, rent, consulting, overhead. He was deducting his mistress. He was deducting the house. He was about to sign a joint return with me. If I signed it, knowing it was false, I would be complicit. My CPA license, my career, my freedom, the plan didn't come from anger. It came from necessity. I stood, wiped the steam from the bathroom mirror, and looked at myself. The woman staring back didn't look different, but she was. Marilyn, the wife, had stepped aside. Marilyn, the auditor, had taken over. I turned off the shower and went back to work. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was spiraling, but because there was too much left to verify. Sleep is a luxury when timelines are incomplete. I changed into clean clothes, tied my hair back, and treated the night like a work shift. The kind I used to pull during forensic audits when deadlines mattered more than circadian rhythms. By 3 a.m, I had mapped nearly every false expense Gordon had routed through LSC Partners. It wasn't just consulting fees and fake invoices. He had layered the deception, travel reimbursements disguised as site visits, equipment rentals that never happened, mileage logs that coincided perfectly with drives to Brentwood. The audacity of it wasn't what struck me. It was the care. He had planned this with the same meticulousness he applied to load calculations and stress tolerances. He had treated deception like a design problem. I created a second spreadsheet, this one color-coded. Red for falsified invoices, yellow for questionable but not yet proven expenses, green for legitimate costs that could be corroborated independently. By the time the sky outside began to lighten, red dominated the screen. I exported copies to an encrypted drive and labeled them neutrally. If anyone ever saw these files, they would read like professional documentation, not revenge. Intent mattered. Tone mattered. Everything mattered. At 7:30, my phone buzzed. Gordon's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. I let it ring, then vibrate, then fall silent. A moment later, a text appeared. Running late today. Big client issue, don't wait up. I stared at the message, noting how automatic the lie was. No hesitation. No detail, just enough information to sound plausible. I didn't respond instead. I forwarded the message to Brenda. She replied almost immediately. He's sloppy now. I closed the laptop and went through my morning routine with deliberate normalcy. Shower, makeup, coffee, toast. Each movement was controlled, practiced, intentional. The performance of being unaware had become a skill I hadn't known I possessed. At 9:15, I was in my office. My assistant, Leela, poked her head in. You okay? She asked. You look focused. I am, I said. Cancel my afternoon meetings. I need uninterrupted time. She nodded, already backing out. I locked the door and pulled out the encrypted drive. This part required precision. If Gordon had been siphoning funds, there would be secondary effects. Vendors not paid on time, margins thinner than expected, cash flow projections that didn't align with revenue. I pulled quarterly reports and began recalculating margins manually. Kensington should have been yielding 12% net. On paper, it was barely clearing 8%. 4% over a multi-million-dollar project wasn't an accident. I ran variance analyses. The discrepancies clustered around the same periods as LSC transfers. He wasn't just stealing. He was bleeding the company. I drafted a memo to myself, formal and restrained, outlining potential exposure. If the IRS audited Gordon Miller Designs, they would start with Kensington, large project, complex accounting. Perfect storm. I could report this. I could also wait. Timing mattered. At noon, Brenda called. He moved money yesterday, she said without preamble. From where? LSC to a personal account. She said, not his, hers. Tina, how much? 120,000. That changed things. That's not monthly. I said, no. Brenda agreed, that's panic. I opened the spreadsheet again. That amount corresponded exactly to the bonus Gordon was scheduled to receive at the end of the quarter. He was draining before discovery. Can you freeze it? I asked, not without triggering alarms. Brenda said, but I can flag it, do it. I said, quietly. There was a pause. Marilyn, she said, what are you planning? I'm protecting myself. I said, everything else is secondary. She exhaled. Good, she said, because this is about to get ugly. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went home early. The house felt different now, like a set built around a story I no longer believed. The photos on the walls, the furniture we chose together, the quiet order Gordon loved to brag about to guests. It all felt provisional. I went into his office. Gordon kept things tidy, but not organized, papers stacked neatly without logic. A facade of control. I didn't touch anything yet. Touching left traces. Instead, I photographed the desk. The drawers, the bookshelf, the filing cabinet. Then I sat in his chair and logged into his desktop. He'd never changed his password. It was my birthday. The arrogance of it almost made me laugh. I opened his email. The first thing I did was search for LSC. Hundreds of results. He hadn't used his work email exclusively. That was his mistake. He'd used his personal account too. The language shifted there, less formal, more intimate. I didn't read everything. I skimmed looking for patterns, payment confirmations, wire instructions. Messages that began with, did it go through? Then I searched Tina. Her emails were brief, gratitude heavy. Almost deferential. Thank you for everything. I don't know what I'd do without you. He's growing so fast, he. I didn't open the attachments yet. Attachments took time. I copied everything. When Gordon came home that night, I was in the kitchen. He froze for half a second when he saw me. He masked it quickly, but I caught it. Fear flickered before composure returned. Hey, he said, you're home early. Yes, I said. I finished what I needed to. He kissed my cheek. His lips lingered a moment too long, as if checking for tension. How was your day? He asked. Productive, I said. He nodded, relieved by the lack of accusation. Over dinner, he talked. Too much. About projects. About stress. About how hard everything was. I let him. Afterward, he went to shower. I listened to the water run, then picked up his phone from the counter. I didn't need to guess his passcode, our anniversary. I turned off Face ID and opened his messages. Tina's thread was pinned. The last message was from an hour earlier. She's sick. Fever's back. Can you come tonight? He had replied. I'll try. Marilyn's home. I'll tell her I have to review drawings. I locked the phone and set it down exactly where it had been. When Gordon came back into the kitchen, towel around his waist, he looked almost boyish. I need to head back out, he said. Clients freaking out. I nodded, of course. I said, be careful driving. He hesitated, then smiled, reassured. As soon as the door closed behind him, I sat down. This was no longer just about money. This was about custody, criminal exposure, reputation, and survival. I opened my laptop and drafted an engagement letter. Client Marilyn Miller Scope. Forensic financial analysis and asset protection objective. Documentation, preservation, and strategic disclosure. I signed it. Then I opened a new email, recipient, my attorney, subject, immediate consultation. I attached nothing. Yet? I stared at the blinking cursor, feeling the house settle around me, waiting, unaware that the story holding it together had already fractured, that every lie Gordon had built was now catalogued. Time-stamped and preparing to collapse under the weight of its own precision. I knew once I involved my attorney, the shape of everything would change. Until that moment, this had been an internal audit, a private reckoning. After that email, it became a legal narrative, one that would eventually be read by people who didn't care about feelings, only facts, timelines, and intent. My attorney, Susan Hale, called me within 20 minutes. I cleared my afternoon. She said, tell me everything, slowly. I did. Not dramatically, not emotionally. I gave her dates, dollar amounts, structures. I described LSC Partners the way I would describe a shell entity in a deposition. I told her about the house, the trust, the child, the forged invoices. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. You understand, she said finally, that you are standing at the intersection of divorce law, tax fraud, and potential criminal prosecution. Yes, I said. And you understand that if this is handled poorly, you could still be exposed. Yes, good, she said. Then we proceed carefully. She told me not to confront Gordon yet, not emotionally, not legally. She explained that confrontation shifted power prematurely. That once he knew what I knew, he would destroy evidence, move assets, rewrite narratives. You have leverage, she said. Right now, he thinks you're still asleep. When we hung up, I felt something unfamiliar settle over me. Not rage, clarity. Over the next 2 weeks, I lived 2 lives. In one, I was Gordon's wife. I asked about his day. I nodded through explanations. I maintained routines. I laughed at appropriate moments. I even initiated intimacy once, not out of desire, but to preserve behavioral normalcy. Deviations raised suspicion. In the other life, I was dismantling him piece by piece. Susan filed quietly for a financial restraining order, time to activate only once divorce proceedings began. Brenda continued monitoring LSC accounts. The flagged transfer hadn't moved again. Gordon had stopped withdrawing large sums, which meant he sensed pressure, even if he didn't know its source. I compiled a master file, every falsified invoice, every bank transfer, every email thread, every GPS log. The deed, the Facebook screenshot. I printed nothing. Everything was digital, backed up, mirrored, time-stamped. Evidence didn't live in drawers, it lived in redundancies. One night, Gordon came home unusually early. He stood in the doorway longer than normal, watching me read on the couch. "You seem different lately," he said. I looked up, neutral. "Different how?" "Calmer," he said. "Quieter." "I've been busy." I said, "That tends to focus me." He nodded, but his eyes lingered. He was studying me the way engineers studied structures after a tremor, looking for cracks. "What are you reading?" he asked. "Case law," I said truthfully. He laughed, relieved. "Of course you are." 2 days later, Susan called. "It's time," she said. We filed the next morning. Gordon was served at his office mid-meeting, according to Leela, who told me later with wide eyes and a whisper. He came home that night pale, controlled, furious in the quiet way that meant calculations were already underway. He didn't shout. He didn't deny. He asked one question. "How much do you know?" I met his eyes. "Enough," I said. That was when the mask fell. He told me I was overreacting, that Tina had been a mistake, that the child complicated things, that the money was temporary, that he had planned to tell me. He said my name like an apology could still reach me. I didn't argue. I handed him a single printed page, the LSC transaction summary. He stared at it, then at me. "You went through my files," he said. "Yes," I said, "and the bank's, and the county recorder's office, and your email." His shoulders slumped just slightly. "You forged invoices." I continued. "You committed tax fraud. You laundered marital assets through a shell entity. You exposed me legally. I was going to fix it," he said weakly. "You were going to keep it going," I said, "until it collapsed." He tried anger next, accusations, claims that I was cold, distant, married to my work, that he had been lonely. I let him talk until the words ran out. Then I told him about the financial restraining order, about the forensic audit, about the evidence escrow, about the fact that if he contested aggressively, the materials would be disclosed to the IRS automatically. "You wouldn't," he said. "I already have." I replied with my attorney. "It's documented." The silence that followed was total. He moved out that weekend. The house felt lighter after he left, quieter, as if it had been holding its breath. The divorce was not quick, but it was decisive. Gordon agreed to terms within 3 months, full financial disclosure. No spousal support claims, no contest over assets. He retained his firm but lost controlling interest. The Kensington project was restructured under oversight. He did not fight custody. Tina never contacted me. The IRS did. The audit took a year. Gordon was fined heavily. He avoided prison through cooperation and restitution, but his reputation never recovered. Clients left, contracts evaporated, engineers talk. I signed my final divorce papers on a Tuesday afternoon. Afterward, I went back to my office, sat at my desk, and closed the file labeled LSC. I didn't delete it. I archived it. That night, alone in the house, I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker on. I didn't feel victorious. I felt intact. Some betrayals break you because you never see them coming. Others fail because you see them clearly, map them precisely, and refuse to let them define the end of your story. This wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the one I had protected, and that was enough.